Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar hosted by 1Spatial. Thank you for joining us today. I am Matt White, Senior Business Development Manager at 1Spatial, and I'll be chairing today's webinar. Today we'll be talking about building trust in your geospatial data using the OS Data Hub for the Public Sector Geospatial Agreement and using 1Spatial software. Please note that this webinar is being recorded. We'd like to make the recording and the presentations available to all those that are attended today and also registered for this webinar after today's webinar. Everyone is automatically on mute for the duration of the webinar. If you would like to ask a question, then please either type it into the questions box or you can raise your hand using the small hand icon. We'll have time at the end of the presentation for questions. So what I'd like to do now is introduce our speakers for today. I'm delighted that we have two fantastic speakers. Firstly, Charlie Glynn. Charlie is a product manager at Ordnance Survey, Great Britain. Charlie focuses on APIs and developer support. Before this role, he worked on cartography and data visualization. Charlie is passionate about making OS data easy to access and use, and in his spare time, he still likes to make the odd map. And secondly, Phil Ridley. Phil is a senior business development consultant at 1Spatial. Phil works in 1Spatial's government team, supporting customers across the public sector, as well as taking the lead on policing and emergency services in the UK. Phil is passionate about ensuring organisations can make the most of their GIS investments by having good quality geospatial data. I will now hand over to my colleague Phil, who will take us through today's webinar agenda, and also he'll take us through the first part of today's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, and I hope you can all hear me okay. So as Matt said, we're going to be talking today about authoritative data that is provided via the OS Data Hub and how we can get maximum return of value of that and data made available via the PSGA agreement using 1Spatial software to ensure good quality data across our organizations. We have quite a few roadmaps in our life at the moment, but here is the roadmap for the session. So we're going to, we've had our introduction to the webinar. We're then going to go through and have a look at what is authoritative data and why does it need to be of good quality. We're then going to have an overview from Charlie at Ordnance Survey about the OS Data Hub and how that is a way of public sector organisations accessing good quality authoritative data, which has been provided through the PSGA. We're then going to look at how we can use this authoritative data to ensure that all of the data across our organisation is of good quality and fit for purpose in an ever data-driven society. We're then going to have a demonstration looking at the technology about how we could do that and some practical steps that we can take forward. Finally finishing off with some questions and answers. So just before we get started, it would be really great to hear about how you guys are using the authoritative data that's made available. So we've got a couple of interactive questions for you, which should be appearing on the screen at any second now. And we'd really value your feedback on whether you're using the OS Data Hub to access the data available via the PSGA. So if you could please select one of these answers, are you actively using the OS Data Hub at the moment? Your options are yes, no, or unsure. So we'll give you a minute or so to select that option, and then have a look at the results. So if we would have a countdown timer, it'd be going on right now as you've selected. And let's wait and see what the results are. Just give it another couple of seconds for everyone to fill it in. Okay, here are the results coming up. Okay, interesting. So quite a few of you are using the OS Data Hub, but interestingly, the majority are no. So hopefully, after Charlie's presentation, you will be interested. You'll understand more about the Data Hub and how to exploit the services that it makes available for you. Second question coming up now, which is the other theme of this webinar, which is about good quality geospatial data. And that is, do you currently have a system whereby you are able to check the quality of your geospatial data? This could be anything. This could be, do you have a team who are responsible for looking at the quality of the data manually? Do you have technology in place to be running dashboards to look at the quality of your data? Do you maybe even have a team who are working as a data quality working group to workshop and think about how you could be improving the quality of your geospatial data within your organizations? So it's quite an open question because various organizations are at different stages with collecting the quality of their geospatial data. So let's have a look at the answers to that, if they've all come in. Okay, great. Well, that's encouraging to know that all of you have got some form of system for checking the quality of your geospatial data. That's really good to hear. And hopefully what we're showing you today will help inform that good work that all of you are already doing. So without further ado, let's move on in the presentation. Thank you very much for filling that in. So I think we can all agree that over the past 2 decades, GIS and geospatial data has become ever more part of everyday public life. Geospatial data started out in the form of paper maps, which were the initial stages of identifying what was where, i.e. giving things a place. As surveying techniques improved, these maps became increasingly accurate and were used as an authoritative source of spatial information in everyday life, such as resolving boundary disputes. In the late 20th century, as technology moved digital, these paper recordings of spatial data were stored digitally. Initially, this gave us the opportunity to simply pan a digital version of a paper map without the need to store large books. However, as GIS developed, we could start to gain greater insight from this spatial data by running spatial analysis and conflating different data sets. 10 or 15 years ago, we would have been learning GIS skills in a university class, which people now take as part of everyday life with a smartphone. One example being routing analysis using Google Maps. Not only has this changed how people are accessing geospatial data, but also how geospatial data is captured. This has created a vast array of different data sets, from location intelligence data collected through people's smartphone use or the building of open source data sets such as OpenStreetMaps. Amongst the rapidly increasing and variety of geospatial data sources, one of the forms or descriptions of geospatial data is data that is authoritative data, or the important and trusted data. There is value in using phrases such as these, as they highlight that the data we are working with are important to organizations and are key to organizational operations. We've all seen it many times in our careers where important data has not been maintained to standard, and this can lead to all sorts of problems such as false positives or missing data when making operational decisions. At a number of conferences I've been to recently, there have been many discussions both on the value of authoritative data and the need to start to improve our collaboration between organizations through partnerships and standards, etc., to deal with the rise of global events such as climate change, migrant crisis, and more recently, the COVID-19 pandemic. These conferences have highlighted to me that we need to be clear when separating authoritative data from other data sets, even if the other data sets are still important and trusted sources of information. As these collaboration models with geospatial data start to evolve, it is becoming increasingly important to ensure that whilst we want all data to be of a high standard, why it is important to maintain a high quality of our authoritative data in particular. At the third International Workshop on Spatial Data Quality, Professor et al. Proposed a new definition of authoritative data, and that is data provided by or on behalf of a public body which has an official mandate to provide and sustain it, that is based on a set of criteria to ensure known data quality, and that is required to be used or aimed towards extensive use and reuse within the public sector and society as a whole. From this definition, a key point for me is that authoritative data has a mandated use, and it is this mandated use which creates value for authoritative data and that vital importance for its quality and accessibility to be maintained. This mandated use could include in government operations and legal cases, for example, where processes and evidence used to make key decisions could come under immense scrutiny. One may argue that the provision of authoritative data has strong connections back to the origins of spatial data provision, with the paper maps an undisputed record of what is where. So authoritative data is made available to us in Great Britain via the Public Sector Geospatial Agreement and from Ordnance Survey. And the focus of this webinar is to explore how we can get best value from this authoritative data to ensure that all of our data is of good quality and fit for purpose. We frequently hear that society wants to be an increasingly data-driven society, with data forming the cornerstone of evidence for decision making. Not only does this create confidence in decisions being made, but transparency and evidence reasoning. To use a popular phrase, everything happens somewhere, and therefore location is a key component to the data behind our data-driven society. In many ways, the location underpins this digital ambition to be truly data-led. This is becoming increasingly recognised in the government with the Data Standards Authority and the Data Quality Hub. The Data Standards Authority works to improve how the public sector manages data. The Data Standards Authority does this by establishing standards to make it easier and more effective to share and use data across government. The Data Quality Hub aims to improve the quality of all types of data and analysis across government, and will do that by supporting organisations to better understand, communicate, and improve the quality of their data and their analysis. This new desire to be truly data-driven in society is great, but we need to think practically about how we can become truly data-led with good quality data. In the past, this would have meant embarking on a long and expensive digital transformation program, but with the introduction of the OS Data Hub via the PSGA agreement and 1Spatial's technology, what was a big, expensive digital transformation program now becomes just the work of a moment. And to find out more about the OS Data Hub and the features and the data that's available, I'll now hand over to Charlie from Ordnance Survey. Charlie.
Thank you very much, Phil. Thank you, Matt, and thank you to the whole 1Spatial team for the invite today to come along and talk to you about Ordnance Survey data, about the Data Hub, and what's available. It's really encouraging to see during the poll that nearly half of you are already signed up and actively using the Data Hub. So hopefully after today's webinar, a few more of you might be encouraged to sign up and check it out and see what's available as well. So yeah, thank you. Next slide, please, Phil. So the OS data principles, these are a set of principles that our kind of data team have been working on for a little while now, alongside Geospatial Commission and other organisations across government working with geospatial data. And as you can see, one of those principles is that our data is authoritative. But these are the principles by which we manage our data from kind of the moment that we collect that data right through its data life cycle to the moment that it gets into the hands of our users. You can see them there on the screen. I particularly like the fact that our data is cared for, and at Ordnance Survey we have lots of experts and people that are extremely passionate about data, extremely passionate about geo, and yeah, our data from end to end is cared for, managed, and really well maintained. Next slide, please. And here's some facts and figures about Ordnance Survey. So yeah, been going for a long time, since 1791. Probably got a good shout there for being one of the oldest kind of data companies in the world. We have 240 kind of surveyors out in the field collecting data every day. That combined with our flying team collecting aerial imagery, you can see we make 20,000 changes to our database every single day. We've got over 5,500 public sector organisations consuming Ordnance Survey data via the PSGA in one form or another. And what I'm here to talk about in a moment is the new Data Hub and the new APIs that we have available. And you can see from some of these statistics the sheer volume of data that we collect. It's comprehensive, it's accurate, and it's well sort of maintained and kept up to date. Next slide, please. So yeah, the Data Hub. So the OS Data Hub is our new kind of data access platform, and it became available to public sector organisations earlier this year on the 11th of January. And as I say, you know, really good uptake so far. Really encouraging to see so many people starting to access their data through this new platform. And the idea with it, you know, the overarching concept is it really improves the user experience, the ability to find and discover our data, and then ultimately to access and use it. So it will replace lots of the other data sort of platforms that we've had before, kind of bringing everything together under this one roof, under the OS Data Hub. That will include, you know, data downloads, APIs, which I'll talk about in a moment, and also, you know, you have the ability to manage your account, manage who can access the data and the APIs. And there's a really nice new tool on the Data Hub for feeding back any errors and omissions that you find within the data as well. Next slide, please. So yeah, if you sign up for the public sector plan today and you log in to the Data Hub, these are the suite of 7 APIs that you'll be given access to and that you can start using right away. So we've got APIs for backdrop mapping in both raster tile and vector tile kind of formats. We've got OS Places API for addressing, address lookups, UPRN postcode lookups, and lots of different ways that you can work with address data through that API. We have the OS Names API for kind of searching more sort of generic locations. Linked Identifiers API for discovering the relationships between key identifiers. That includes the TOIDs, UPRNs, and USRNs, and really allows you to start linking data and do some really interesting things there. We've got a Downloads API so that you can automate your download of Ordnance Survey data and kind of build that into your data flow lines in a much more automated way. And then the OS Features API, which is one that we're going to focus on just now. So next slide, please. Before I move on to Features API, just some kind of points as to why you may want to use Ordnance Survey's geospatial APIs. So they allow you to access data efficiently and can be a really good way to reduce some of your data management overheads in the fact that you're just connecting directly and kind of the update of that data. You know, Ordnance Survey takes care of data refreshes, so you know that you're always connecting with the most recent data. It means that you can interact with it in new and kind of innovative ways. So as we saw there are 7 different APIs which allow you to kind of access different data layers in lots of kind of different ways, both filtering kind of spatially and based on kind of attribute filters as well. Consistency, so you use the same data across all of your different applications from kind of desktop, web and mobile, and everybody in your organization will have the same view of the world essentially. You know, you're confident that everybody's looking at the same data. As I say, it's always kept up to date and allows you to automate certain elements of your workflow. Next one, please. So yeah, now we're going to look at Features API in a bit more detail, and Phil will give us a demo to kind of show how this can be used and integrated into the 1Spatial software. So OS Features API is a web feature service. It's based on the OGC web feature service standard. It really is a new way to access Ordnance Survey data and do that in a much more direct manner. The idea being that you request and you access the data that you need as and when you need it. You can get that data back in both GeoJSON and GML formats. And yeah, you're connecting to the database, so you're getting the full kind of rich geometries and all the rich attribution on those features as well. Next slide, please, Phil. And these are the list of data layers that are available through the Features API. So as you can see on the layer of premium data, you get all of the master map data from the topography layer, which the buildings in there already include the building height attributes through sites layer, green space, water network, highways network, and indeed the detailed path network within national parks. And then on the open data side of things, it also includes all the layers of open Zoom stack, plus the open geometries and kind of identifiers for the UPRNs, the USRNs, and the TOIDs. Next one, please. Yeah, so it can be used for visualization and for analysis, and that's, you know, we're going to see a really great demo of the features APIs being used for analysis today. So a single request can contain up to 100 features. This is something worth noting if you're using it, but through the concept of paging, you can request subsequent kind of features until you have, you know, all the data that you require for your area of interest. It certainly does become much more powerful when kind of used in conjunction with other kind of APIs and other data sets, you know, whether they're being joined and connected using the unique identifiers, or you're doing, you know, some form of spatial filtering and spatial analysis. It can be a really sort of key component within a kind of broader data pipeline. Important to note that it's not for backdrop mapping, and we have two other APIs, namely OS Maps and OS Vector Tile API, that will give you Ordnance Survey based maps. Next one, please. Yeah, and these are some of the kind of different use cases to which you can put this API. So it allows you to select, filter, query, view data in its kind of simplest form, but also do some really sort of complex analysis as well, you know, including tracing over the detailed OS geometries or snapping to the nodes on the geometries, as we talked about, linking, you know, whether that's through the link identifier API or just kind of linking straight off to your own data holdings. And, you know, ultimately this is all about generating new location-based insight. Next slide, please. And yeah, these are some of the kind of ideas and examples of questions that using OS Features API can help to answer, as I say, as part of a sort of broader workflow. Things like how many buildings in my area of interest or are over a certain height. You know, find my nearest feature. It could be green space, hospital, school. Where are all the wind turbines within a kind of, you know, given area of interest? What percentage of my area of interest is built on, or is, you know, what percentage of my area of interest is, you know, building footprint or man-made land, that kind of thing. Simple questions as well, like what is the name of this road? So just simply clicking a feature and pulling out information straight from the attribution, or, you know, indeed what type of surface is this footpath. So I think that just gives you an idea of the kind of broad sort of spectrum of use cases that this kind of data can be put to, really, and it is now, as I say, much more accessible via the Features API. Next slide, please, Phil. Cool. Yeah. So just last one from me, really, just to leave you with some useful links. So for those that are already on the hub, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. That's great. For those who haven't checked it out yet, that's the URL, so osdatahub.os.uk, to sign up to the Data Hub and start using it. We have much more information about the PSGA and what else is available on os.uk/PSGA. That page will be kept updated as we sort of deliver more things throughout the months and years ahead. And os.uk/developers is a really fantastic place to start. Lots of kind of code examples and lots of tools to help you kind of, you know, get started, really, get on board with the APIs and start developing those into your applications. Yeah, thank you very much. Back to you, Phil.
Thank you, Charlie. That was great and very insightful. And if you have any questions for Charlie on the OS Data Hub, please do put them in the Q&A box, and we will come back to that at the end of the presentation. So the part of the presentation now is, as Charlie said, there's lots of different applications for this data, which is made available to the public sector organisations via the PSGA. And the one that we want to focus on now for the second half of this talk is by using the authoritative data, how can we fix up all of the data within our organisation? Now, there's a region of organisations who have signed up to this webinar. So we've called it local data. So local data is the data within your organisation. And by using the authoritative data that is made available through the PSGA and via the OS Data Hub, we have a quick and simple way to fix up and correct all of any data problems that there may be in the local data set, and that is using the 1Spatial technology, which we're going to have a look through in a minute. But what we're doing is we're taking the local data, referencing it against the authoritative data from the OS Data Hub, and making any changes to the local data as required. And the result is we end up in good quality local data as well as good quality authoritative data. So there's good quality geospatial data all around. Some examples of where this may be applied is when local authorities are producing data for local land and property gazetteers and producing geospatial data to be used for planning, housing and estate management. That data needs to be of good quality, because if you're doing planning assessments and the local authorities data is referred to as the point of truth, we need to make sure that is correct, to make sure that there's no boundary disputes in planning applications. Another example is that central government need to ensure that that the national data is trustworthy to deliver frontline services and to shape and monitor policies. A good example is giving farmers and landowners the finances, the actions they need to, the finance they need to improve the quality of the environment around them. So good quality data is needed there for farmers to be able to claim the correct amount of money for their land to ensure it's being looked after correctly. Another example is with address matching, and this is a police example that we're going to have a look at in a minute with a live demo. So this is one where if you need to ensure that you know the location of all of the incidents are happening in the correct place. Again, you do this by referencing the authoritative data made available to you via the PSGA. And then the final one, which is the example on the slide we've got there, is coastal defence validation. So, for example, the Environment Agency or other similar organisations, local authorities are required to be maintaining coastal assets and ensuring with frequent inspections that they are in good condition. And we need to know that where the assets of poor condition are, and that everything is in good solid shape and fit for purpose in the correct location. So how do we do this in technology such as 1Spatial's technology? So we've got a rules engine, which is a no-code solution, which is called OneIntegrate, and this is all designed to be able to connect to data and do your data correction simply, easily, and quickly. But the important thing here is that it is no code. So you see on the screen there is no coding there, so there's no risk of any technology debt. And it's made up of data stores, rules, actions, action maps, and sessions. So data stores, this is where you connect to the data. This may be connecting to your local data in your organization or to PSGA data, such as via the OS Data Hub. Here we've connected to the OS Features API, and you can see there that we've selected the bits of the OS Features API that are of interest. It's worth noting that OneIntegrate can connect to over 500 different types of data sources. So this is a really dynamic tool to be able to fit into existing technology infrastructures, and it's data agnostic as well. We then move on to rules. Now, rules are written out again in a no-code setup. We're going to have a look at a rule in the live demo environment, but what's of note is you see on the left-hand side, these are filed in a normal filing system. So if you can use my documents, you can manage your rules in OneIntegrate. And the idea here is we're building the rule once and it can be used multiple times. So if you've written a rule, for example, the rule we've got here is that burglaries must be located within local buildings, i.e. domestic buildings. If you wanted to reuse that rule in multiple different workflows, then you can just copy and paste it. So you build it once and use it multiple times. And rules are written positively, so we're not having to second guess all of the possible exceptions. We're simply stating, writing down a rule, this is how we want our data to be. Actions work in a similar way to rules, except these are doing the fixing up of the data. So here you're writing out if a piece of data or a feature has failed a rule, then what action do we need to take to fix that? And then we also have action maps. Action maps define when an action is applied. So if a feature fails a rule, then we apply an action afterwards. And this is giving us control in our workflow as to when we want to be deploying the actions. And finally, these are then deployed into sessions. And sessions define the order of the rules and actions that we apply to data. Sessions can be activated either through simple interfaces such as the One Data Gateway provided by 1Spatial, or they can be called by an API and integrated into any other existing environment. So if I quickly now share my screen, then we will quickly have a look at OneIntegrate here. So we've got here, this is the connection on OneIntegrate to the Ordnance Survey OS Data Hub and the OS Features API. We've connected straight away, and you can see here, these are all of the different features that are available via the OS Data Hub. And the ones that are of interest here for us looking at a police example is the address, UPRN, the USRN, the topographic area, defining that we're within a building, and then the local building, which is defining this as a domestic building. We could then decide if we're cleansing data, where we want that data to be outputted, and then we can also do some schema mapping here as well. If we move on to the rules then, so using the filing system, we're on the OS Data Hub and we want to build a new rule here. So click simply New Rule, and again, we can write out what the rule is in plain English. Again, this is also reduce the risk of technology debt. So the rule that we're going to write in this instance is that a burglary must take place within a domestic property. Okay, and we click save, and if you wanted to type further descriptions or comments, if you were updating the rule, then you can do so in these boxes here. And when we're in OneIntegrate now, there is a simple auto assist button here, which will help us build the rule as we're going along. So if I just quickly swap which screen I'm sharing, then the auto assist will appear. 1 second, sorry. Okay, so we are going to, here's a rule that I built earlier. Always good to have one backup just in case your demo doesn't quite work as you're hoping. So here we go. We've got the burglary instance here. So we've connected to the burglary instance data, and then we're going to give it a spatial reference here. So we're going to say that the burglary instance must be contained within the domestic building's geometry. So we built that up using the wizard, and we're going to deploy that into our session. What we've also got here is we've got actions. And so again, if I use the filing system here on the left-hand side, this is in true Blue Peter style. Here is one that I built earlier. So we're going to say that if you've got a burglary instance that's not within a domestic building, then move the burglary instance to be in the right place, and also double check that the UPRN matches, because we don't want burglaries just flying around all over the place. If I then move over here to the action maps, we can define when that action map is going to be built. So, for example, you would just click there, new action map. We can call it here saying move burglary to be within a domestic property. Click save there, and then here we're just navigating through. So because we cheated slightly, we're going to use the archived rule here, which is that the burglary must be within a domestic property. So if it fails that rule, we're then going to apply that we must move the burglary to be in the right location. So there you go. If it fails that rule, then apply that action. We're then going to load that up into our session here. So I'm going to put it in at the end. We've got a few other rules and actions that are on the screen that you can read just to get some context to some other ideas that can happen. So if we're adding this into our workflow, we click check rules, navigate to the OS Data Hub here. We're going to select that rule there, move it over. You haven't seen me do any coding just yet. We're also going to apply an action map, and we're going to then navigate to the one that we just made here, move the burglary to be within a domestic property, and we're then going to check the rule again afterwards. We don't normally do this, but it's just for a before and after effect. Okay, and you can see there that those have been included in the workflow at the bottom. So if I was then to activate this within a wider environment, this could be called by an API, or it could be called by the One Data Gateway interface, which we're going to see in a second. You'll see there that we are connecting to the data, and we're now just, so we've loaded up, this is our local data, and we're now loading up the data hub. And whilst that's running through, you'll see at the top that we have a bounding box, which could be a boundary around your local authority area, or if you're in emergency services, it could be around your force area. And this means that when we're connecting to the OS Data Hub, we're only loading up the data within that bounding box. We're not loading up the whole of Great Britain to process any simple actions. So you'll see there that's run through. At the end, you would normally then have a commit to or a copy to if you want to put it back into the database, but we don't want to be updating anything just here. So we've actually just got a pause at the end. So for example, on the rules that we just wrote with the action maps, you'll see we had before only 75% of the data, burglary data, was within a domestic property. We therefore applied the action map to fix it up, and now all of it is correct and we're good to go. So that's just one quick look at how OneIntegrate can be used to look at the OS Data Hub and take your local data and validate your local data against the OS Data Hub using those rules and actions. And we've started to apply this into different sectors. I mentioned some of the use cases beforehand, but one of the ones that we've been looking at and prototyping and running some trials in is within the police sector. So within the National Policing Digital Strategy, data has been listed as a key enabler and a cornerstone to ensuring that the police forces in the UK become truly digital and truly data-led. And this is implemented through what's called the POL data model, which is if you're investigating a crime, you should be able to link persons, locations, objects, and events. I like to think of this as if you were playing a game of Cluedo. If you were to work out how the murder took place, you need to know the person, which would be Colonel Mustard. You need to know the location, which is the kitchen. You need to know the object, which is the candlestick. And you also need to know the event, which was the murder. And by linking different data sets, we can make sure that we've got each of these four components and therefore work out the crime. And to be able to do that, we need to have good quality data and data that can be linked. And that's where the OS Data Hub and validating against the OS Data Hub can help. So for example, here we've taken different data quality use cases and prototyped them into specific business applications. And this is something that we prototyped last year. And we're hoping that we can start to get feedback from different police forces or different emergency services on how this could be applied within the industry, or even different industries such as local authorities, if this way of applying data quality is of relevance. So the example that we've got here is a UPRN fix up. So we're going to open up the UPRN application, and we've kickstarted here. It's setting off. Again, this is all no code, and this is based on One Data Gateway, which is a way of accessing the OneIntegrate rules engine. If you think of the rules engine we just looked at on OneIntegrate, that's your car engine. You're designing your car. Here, this is the chassis. This is the bit that everyone sees. So we're getting started, and we're now just loading up the data. You saw us drag and drop on the data that we want to fix up. And we're going to prepare the engine. We're going to load the RMS data, and then we're going to run some checks beforehand and then some checks afterwards. And this is just checking. We're saying every record in the RMS must have a valid and correct UPRN, because it is becoming mandated that all data sets must have this. So we've run through, I'm going to push pause there quickly so I can't talk quick enough. We've run through there nearly 1,000 features, and only 23% of them had a valid UPRN. And the police force has set a standard saying we need to have at least 70% of these with a valid UPRN, because we want to ensure that our data quality team aren't having to spend too long doing repetition tasks. We want to be able to just get on and do the job. So we run through some cleansing using the actions as we just saw, and you can see there we're now over 73%. That's good enough. We can pass that through, and then we want to load that back into the RMS. So now the police force has good quality data that they can use to start linking with other data sets such as taxation, the local authority data, for example. And all we've got here at the end is we've got a PDF of certificate, because in the emergency services data is an asset, and if you're doing automated changes, you need to ensure that you've got some evidence about what has happened when, which data was validated and cleansed against which rules and actions. So there's a clear transparency trail throughout your entire data management process. So what can we conclude from having looked at that demo is we can be using the good quality authoritative data from the OS Data Hub to validate other data sets within our public sector organizations. We are validating, the validation and data correction is done using no-code rules engine to minimize the risk of technology debt. Rules are managed in a simple to use filing system, allowing the reuse of rules in any workflow or project. We set up the rules and actions once and they can be reused multiple times. And we can also then load these into targeted business applications using One Data Gateway. And all of this is reusing data that's been made available via the PSGA, data that the government have already invested in. We're reusing that to get the maximum value out of it as much as we can, to ensure that all of our geospatial data across all of our organizations is of good quality and fit for purpose for us to be a truly data-driven society. So some concluding points, just before we've got our final couple of poll questions, is that we've got authoritative data and it's made available via the PSGA and it's accessible via the OS Data Hub. So it's there ready for you to be used. And there's many different use cases of it, as you saw in Charlie's presentation. If you want to ensure that your organization has got good quality data throughout, 1Spatial's technology provides a no-code solution for you to validate and correct all of your data using the OS authoritative data made available via the OS Data Hub. And by combining the two, public sector organizations can build continued trust in their geospatial data, potentially avoiding the need for long and expensive data transformation programs. So finally, we've got a final poll before we move to Q&A. So Fiona, can we have the first question loaded up, please? So first question, this is more of a test of our presentations. Will you now consider using the OS Data Hub APIs? A lot of you were already using them, but let's see if that's gone up or down after Charlie's presentation. So it'd be great if you could fill in your answers, please. And don't forget, if you're still unsure, then that's absolutely fine. We've got contact details for you to get in touch so that you can find out more about what the Data Hub is and how it works, which may help you when answering this question. So do we have the results in? I assume they're just still loading up. Brilliant. So I think we'll count that as vast majority of you will start using the OS Data Hub APIs, which I'm sure Charlie will be pleased to hear. Those of you who still ticked unsure, the next slide does have contact details if you want to get in touch to find out more, if you have questions that still need answering before deciding whether you're going to start using the APIs or not. And the final poll question, please, Fiona. It was just gone back. Oh, there we go. And will you now consider using PSGA data to check the quality of your data against an authoritative source? You don't have to use 1Spatial technology, but it'd be nice if you did. But you know, at least has this made you start thinking about how you might want to start validating your data by using the data that's made available to you via the PSGA. Just start thinking about processes about how that can be done. And how we can exploit a resource that's already been invested to make it available to us, to ensure that all of our data is of good quality and we can be truly data-driven in our organizations. So Fiona, when I think the answers have come in, we can have a look. Brilliant. That's awesome to see that there's such a majority there who will have a look at this moving forward. And again, those of you who are unsure, on the next slide, we will have some points of contact that you can get in touch with if you have more questions or want to go into more detail before you commit to hitting that yes button. So if we can go back to the slides, please, Fiona, that'd be great. Are we there?
Hi, Phil, you might have to share and unshare.
Okay, no problem. I'll just do that now. Okay, good. So all that's left for me to say is thank you very much for attending. I hope this has been a useful session for you. I know there's been a lot of webinars this year, but I really hope this has been something different and interesting for you. Based on those poll questions, a lot of you hopefully have seemed to have responded well to what's been presented today. there are lots of options out there for OS Data Hub or OneSpatial, or working with OneSpatial, for you to have a go and try a few things with no strings attached. We're not going to start pummeling you and tying you in. And so if you want to try anything, have a go, explore some things in more detail, or if you just have some questions, if you were still ticking that unsure box, please don't hesitate to get in touch with government@onespatial.com. If your question is for about the OS Data Hub specifically, we will navigate you over to Charlie and get your questions answered by him. If it's about the OneSpatial technology, we will put you in touch with one of our specialists so that you can have a chat with them and get some of your questions answered. And if you want to have a go, you can have a go, and we can help you out there. So Matt, have we got any questions that have come in?
Hi everyone. Hi. Can I just ask Charlie to come back up on stage? Great. Back on stage. I am on stage. Sorry, I apologise to start with. My webcam wasn't quite working. Right. Okay. We've got lots of questions. Please keep your questions coming in if you're just thinking of one at the moment. This is a great opportunity. We've got two great speakers in front of us. So Charlie, quite a few questions for you to start with. The first question from James Laver. What is the difference between open and premium?
Yeah, so the Ordnance Survey we've got a fairly large portfolio of data products. They're available through public sector, but also to commercial sort of companies through our kind of partner channel and others. So our portfolio is kind of split between data that is paid for, and that's the premium data, and data that is open data. And by open we mean sort of truly open data in the sense of frictionless to kind of access and download, and also no cost. And that is made available under the open government license, whereas the premium data is made available under a kind of different set of licenses, including, you know, for public sector organisations, the sort of PSGA member license.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Hopefully that answers James's question. Second question, Charlie, for you. I'll give you a break in a minute. Second question is from Daniel Hardwick. Has the OS Places API been released as an Esri locator yet? I don't know if you're able to answer that.
Yeah, so we've sort of been in discussions with Esri UK as they have been developing a new locator to make that available to users. The latest I heard was that it was kind of in test with some users. I couldn't tell you now today whether it's been released yet or not. If it hasn't, I know it is close.
Right, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll come back to you, if that's okay, in a minute, Charlie, with some more questions. Phil, got a question for you. So you've shown us the OneIntegrate software. How flexible is the software to accommodate any updates to changing data standards that different organisations have got?
Yeah, very simple, Matt. As you saw on that filing system, I had to frantically use an archive rule in the demo. So you simply do your updates on the rules as you write them in. It's all written in no code, so you can just transfer your rules across and rewrite them, and then save an archive rule in an archive folder, so you can access it and go back to it any time. And then you just save it as versioning, as you do with sort of document management of version 1, version 2. Each time there's been an update, so you've got full transparency all the way through.
Okay, thanks very much, Phil. Okay, we've got lots of questions. So Charlie, a good question for you from Darren Fennell. Will the OS Maps API be available as a WMS, as I cannot consume a WMTS?
So there's no plans for that at the moment, Matt. So it is available as WMTS, so Web Mapping Tiling Service, or the kind of ZXY, which is more the sort of web de facto standard. I'll be really interested. So I know you said, Phil, you can put people in touch with myself to kind of discuss what the requirements might be there for a WMS. So yeah, please do get in touch and take that feedback on board.
Okay, thanks very much. Another question, Charlie, for you from James Laver. Can we consume the web feature service or the web map service, and how can we discuss this further?
So
how do they get in touch?
Yeah, I mean, if you work at a public sector organisation that is already a member of the PSGA, then it is as simple as going to the OS Data Hub and signing in, basically. If not, then there are sort of there's a support page on the Data Hub with kind of information about getting in touch. Yeah, as I say, if you're already a signed up PSGA member, then just go to the Data Hub, sign in, and start using.
Great. Okay, so that's pretty self-service, really.
Yeah, that is one of the real benefits of the hub itself as a platform. Much more self-service.
Great. A question for you, Phil. In your presentation, you included an example of validating data for the police. Have you got any other use cases for local government?
Yeah, so it's basically if you've got any sort of asset management, really. So if you're managing local assets, then and you need to be validating them against an authoritative source, then that's one of the particular use cases. One of the ones that always springs to mind is when managing local planning applications. If people have got if there's any boundary disputes or any planning processes that need to go through. If someone's sending you an application for planning, you can run it through OneIntegrate and validate it against the authoritative source. For example, making sure that people weren't building on land that wasn't theirs or creeping over the line. You could be validating it against the OS data automatically using that workflow in a matter of seconds rather than having to go through rolls of data, sort of cross-referencing all the time.
Okay, thank you very much. A question from Holger Kessler, so one for you, Charlie. I think it's more of a comment rather than a specific question, or maybe you have this already. He was just asking, it would be great if we could have some video tutorials and other materials for using the OS Data Hub with QGIS.
Yeah, okay, really great feedback. Again, take that on board. So we do have a getting started guide on the Data Hub itself under the documents kind of page there, which does walk through connecting the Maps API in various different GIS packages, including QGIS. But yeah, we can certainly look into the idea of creating some video tutorials as well.
Great. Okay. That was all the questions that I think that we've had. I'll just see if we've got any more that just come in. I don't think so. Let's just have a quick look at the ones I was noting as we were going along. Yeah, I don't think so. I'll give people a little bit longer. I'll ask you a couple of questions. I know this is a bit cheeky because in terms of questions, but I'll ask you a couple of questions. But we've kind of heard a lot this afternoon in terms about the OS Data Hub and also about how different organisations can then use the OS Data Hub to help ensure that they can build trust in their data. If people want to get started, what would you suggest as their kind of first small step that they could take to get started on the journey of using the OS Data Hub and also possibly technology, maybe that's 1Spatial technology, for improving the quality of their data? I don't know, Phil, whether you'd like to go first.
Yeah, I think for me the first step is always to map out where do you want to be when you set off on data quality. Although I said frequently in the presentation, it doesn't need to involve a big digital program. when you get going, it can sometimes be quite overwhelming, and you can sometimes end up a bit swamped. So what I always think is it's really good to define this is where we want to be, and this is where we are, and what are the small steps we can take along the way. As some of the prototypes we've been doing with the police over the past year has been exactly that. It's been saying, well, if we try and do all of this at once, we're going to end up completely swamped. So let's take specific use cases, specific bits of the data, work on that, get that right, and then move on to the next stage. So first of all, map out where you want to be, then identify almost like, it's a cheesy phrase, but identify a journey that you want to go on, and which are the bite-sized chunks that you can take off along the way. And that's where those targeted business applications start to come in. So I'd say it's twofold there, Matt.
Okay, thanks. And then Charlie?
Yeah, so I think anyone just sort of coming in, just getting started, sort of entry level, seeing what's possible, what's available. In terms of the Ordnance Survey data, I would say that as we've discussed, because of its self-service nature, the Data Hub is the place to kind of start. As I say, lots of great documentation on there about what is available. As an entry-level product, I think OS Maps API, so just bringing in base mapping, the Ordnance Survey sort of accurate, authoritative base mapping is a really great place to start. And then you might want to start to sort of build on layers of information from sort of like OS Places API for address search and things like that. Yeah, I'll just give another plug for os.uk/developers. So that is a place where we're sharing sort of online resources that can really help you get started sort of quickly. So lowering those barriers of entry, but also a place to kind of showcase the art of the possible as well. I think as we've discussed throughout this webinar, the sort of breadth and depth of what is possible with geospatial data is pretty phenomenal and can probably feel quite overwhelming at times. So, we're trying to share some kind of use cases and examples of exactly where it can be applied and put, with good benefit and good value out of that data.
Okay, excellent. Well, we're almost coming up to the hour, so I think I haven't seen any more questions come in from the audience. So what I would suggest we do is we look to close the webinar unless anyone has got any final last minutes and wants to squeeze in a question. Otherwise, we will finish it there. So, okay, thank you very much. So what I'd like to say is just say thank you very much to everyone for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully you've taken something away from the last hour that you didn't know when you joined at 2 o'clock. Like I say, we will be making both the recording and the presentation available to all those that have joined us this afternoon, and also we'll be making it available to all those that unfortunately couldn't join us but have certainly registered. So I'd just like to again say thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to thank Charlie, thank you very much for taking the time this afternoon to join us, and also for Phil as well for joining us. And we look forward to continuing the conversation. And like I say, if you've got any questions, then please do get in touch with us, and we shall speak to you soon. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.